Hey everybody, this is Greg Dave, sports physiotherapist. What you see in front of you today is the app SimpleMind. It's a mind mapping software. The reason I'm doing this video today is I wanted to give you a little insight into how my brain works. Some of you don't care, some of you might be interested, but this particular mind map was created because I was doing some consulting with a coach and he had some questions about an athlete that he's working with who's also got a bit of an injury. So I worked him through some concepts that he understood and some exercises that he understood, but I could see that his mind was glazing over. He just couldn't quite put them all together. So I drew him a mind map, and when I said that to him, he was super pumped. He could see where everything fitted together, and it gave him some context about the exercises. So this is a schematic. You can't read that right now, but I'm going to zoom in and show you what's going on. So we've got a particular footballer. We want to take this footballer to a point where they can pass certain tests to demonstrate that they are meeting the goals that they want, which was to be better at agility, but they're currently suffering a back injury. So we're looking at single leg loaded activities, such as a triple crossover hop for distance, or a triple hop for distance, or a single hop for distance, or even lateral hop for distances. These type of tests are going to show up asymmetries between left and right sides. Lower quarter wide balance test is also going to show us that asymmetry. And we're going to see those as as risks for future recurrences of the problem that he's got. Other agility tests like a 505 are included in there. But before this performance coach takes this person through these type of tests, they're going to need to have done some rehab that prepares them for some of these tests. So I gave him some examples of some rehab that was directed towards lateral movement because the athlete's main goal was to be better at agility, and the pain was affecting his ability to do that. Now this particular mind mapping software allows you to stick a link in there. So I could click on that globe there and it would take me to a web page that's going to give me the lateral hops to sticking one landing. And I can add power bands and I can resist that, and he can resist that. There are some variations here. Each of these links takes you to a website that shows you what that link is. So this coach that I'm helping, he can see that before this athlete can be tested for agility, because that's his main goal, he's got to go through some other steps. He's got to do some rehab that takes him through those, that prepares him for these tests. Here's some examples of the rehab that can be done. Before he can do that performance rehab where he is jumping around at greater than body weight, he's going to need to do some activities that require dynamic stability in single leg stance. And he's going to need to do some stuff in split stance and bilateral stance and split kneeling and tall kneeling and 4-point kneeling. If this coach was SFMA trained, he could do some work on the ground and rolling as well. And there's plenty of examples that I've gave him there, but he's going to need to tick those boxes through there. We're talking about dynamic stability. This generally as a concept is where you take one joint and you move around that joint whilst it's weight bearing, and that the kinetic chain that is associated with that joint does not leak energy, meaning it can control the forces of the body moving around it without it collapsing. And here's a number of examples. So the coach that I'm consulting with, he can see that before he goes ahead and does these agility tests, he's got to do some rehab that prepares him for that. Before he can do rehab at greater than body weight, he's got to do some rehab at body weight in various positions: 4-point kneeling, tall kneeling, split kneeling, bilateral stance, split stance, single leg stance. Then he's got to do some walking drills. These are all walking drills that this coach has seen before. but it's now giving him some context. So there's a range of different ones there. There's even some lunges in there, which is more advanced than single leg stance and split stance, but it's still not really greater than body weight. You're still just handling your own body weight. You can add some dumbbells or kettlebells overhead to enhance that. He started to see the picture. I said to him, whoa, before you do dynamic stability work, you've got to have done static stability work. This is a concept, static stability just here. This is a concept where the joint that you're trying to rehabilitate, in coordination with the segments above and below it, are held stable whilst another part of the body is moving around it. So for example, we have again the same positions: bilateral stance, split kneeling, tall kneeling, 4-point kneeling. We're also going to have in there split stance, single leg stance. These are a little different from the dynamic stability ones, but there's a whole bunch of examples in there, and I've given him some links. We've also got some thoracic spine static stability in there because the particular injury involved the lumbar spine. So it involved rehabilitating the joints above and below it, which is the hip joint and the thoracic spine. I also included some shoulder mobility and some ankle mobility work in there because the mobility work, they underpin static stability. So we took the joint by joint approach and we said you need to work on some ankles, some hips, and some thoracic spine. Each one of those need to have a reset. That can be done by the physio or the osteo or the chiro, and they can be done by the athlete themselves. So for the T-spine, I've given him some reset techniques for the thoracic spine that he can do himself, and some for the hips, and some for the ankle. I've also thrown in some reinforcing techniques, some things that you do, some exercises you do after you've done a reset, and a link to each one of those. So he now understands that the athlete needs to reset mobility before they introduce motor control or stability in a static position, before you introduce motor control in a dynamic fashion at single body weight, before you introduce dynamic control with load for time, for distance, for repetitions, in other words, performance, before you introduce testing to see whether you've got symmetry between the left and the right side. The coach that I'm working with also now understands that before you can introduce mobility work, you're going to have to knock out pain, because pain is going to upset that mobility. So that's got to be treated by the physio, by the doctor, or by the person himself. They also need to avoid the aggravating activities and address the contributing dysfunctions that lead to pain. All of these things are within the realm of the athlete and the coach, except for the doctor and physio particular work. So he's now seeing where all of these things fit into a hierarchy, and he can drop in with that athlete and understand where he's missing activities, where he's missing competency before he builds capacity. It gives the coach a fair degree of power over intervening with an athlete when they've also got a rehab professional or a medical professional working with them. So if you haven't got mind map software, get hold of some. Play with it, use it, and see if you can work out where you fit into the bigger picture with your athletes and where they fit into their own schematic. I've been Greg Day. I hope you're having a great day, no pun intended.